Awesome. So whoever wants to start with a question, please feel free to put it in the chat and we will call on you. All right, Casey, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, hi, this is a question for Macy about Ratatouille, the TikTok musical. So my question is kind of a two-parter, but basically Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, was such a beautiful thing to like see grow on TikTok, especially as there were thousands of collaborators just reacting and contributing to it. So my question for you is, do you think this is something that, could have happened if folks weren't isolated? And do you think it's this like type of incredibly collaborative project, could happen again?
Absolutely. So I really not sure it would have happened in the way that it did without the pandemic. One of the first things that I remember early on in the pandemic is like everyone I know downloading TikTok, right? And like putting their energy into this creative thing, but also for like, a lot of this started because Dan Mertz left, who was the music supervisor and arranger of Ratatouille. He had, when Emily Jacobson posted that first video with the Remy the Ratatouille song, he took it and like, made a whole full-on like musical theaterized demo of it that went viral and launched that movement. And, Dan's a busy dude. I'm not sure he would have had time to do something like that if not for the pandemic. So I think that the people who were the creators propelling the movement were like had the ability to be creative in that way that I don't think we did in the before times. And to your second question, I absolutely think that this kind of collaborative project could happen again in the future. I mean, I think we've already kind of seen more of that happening and more people collaborating on TikTok and on other platforms. But I think that it was, especially for like the theater world, which, halted in a very different way than some of the other entertainment industries, being able to all collaborate in that way during that time was such a special thing that I think that I would be shocked if it didn't continue and if we didn't see more of that.
Awesome. Thank you for your response, Macy. Does anyone else have a question? Please go ahead. You don't have to wait for the questions to be finished. If you just want to put, we're going to go down in order. So yeah. Now, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello, Jennifer. I've got a question for you. Hi. In Why Women Kill, you've got very distinctive time periods. Tell me a little bit about how you work with the music to keep those periods very distinctive and signal to the audience exactly when things are happening.
So what's great about Why Women Kill is we do take place in the 40s, but we also are going through the characters' lives. So it was really important to me, as well as the showrunner, Mark Cherry, as well as the studio, that we made sure that as our audience, we understood during that time what was going on. So when Bertram and Alma are younger, they're in their 20s. So it was really important to bring that 20s vibe to signify not only are we going back in time with their original story, how they met, but also it's kind of like a sandwich to come back as we get towards the end of the episode about that little moment and that back end to be like their love started back in the 20s. And then as we kind of go through the catalog of music of different time periods, what's really exciting for me on this show, as I mentioned before, was introducing new demographics and younger audience to a really great classic catalog of music. And one thing I love about the Gen Z audience, especially, in the Comic-Con nerd universe, nerd geek, whatever you want to call it, is that they rediscover new things and they say, oh my gosh, have you heard this thing? And for me, it was exciting to introduce these different audiences to a different catalog. I mean, I'm going on TikTok. I think there might be, a really cool remix of Vera Lynn from Why Women Kill, one of the episodes that we used. I mean, I'm just so excited about that. So not only is it a discovery platform, but also a catalyst for storytelling with characters, environment, as well as, adding a little bit of humor, make it fun. I still laugh at that Vera Lynn placement with the hand coming out and just people, I'll see you again. I mean, that is hilarious to me. So it's also to create a conversation about a little bit of humor in the fact that, maybe someone got murdered.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. Moving on to Lorraine for a question.
Hi guys, hello, I'm Lorraine, I'm from Brazil. and thank you so much for inviting me here today. My question is for Aaron. And the last 2 seasons showed us that the characters Jim Street and DeLuca are trying to create a bond with the community they're living in. So in real life, we know that this is a little bit difficult. For example, the George Floyd's case. And my question is, do you think that by showing that relationship on TV, we can send a message that police officers and people need to have better relationship to avoid cases like Floyd?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And thank you everyone, especially in Brazil, for watching. We really appreciate our fan base in Brazil is always very passionate, so we're always very appreciative. To answer your question, certainly we've been very fortunate in S.W.A.T, the TV show, over the 4 seasons, to be able to tell stories about ways, ideally, that we can look to achieve better communication between seemingly disparate groups, meaning certain neighborhoods and also police officers. And we've been fortunate over the course of 4 years to look at different types of neighborhoods, whether it's the Chinese community in Los Angeles or the Colombian community or the African American community. In the case of the 2 characters you mentioned, Jim Street and Dominique Luca, played by Alex Russell and Kenny Johnson, we felt that we had an opportunity to tell a different slice of where police officers actually live, where they choose to reside. We had found a staggering statistic historically for the LAPD that there was a culture amongst the LAPD where a large group of officers didn't necessarily live where they worked, meaning that they would work in the city but live far away from the city. And what we found is oftentimes that can be a source of disconnect when you're talking about interacting with the people that you police. You may not always know them by face, by name, know who their families are, know them as human beings, basically, more so than subjects to be policed or to be either saved or to be feared, basically. So there was a program that was instituted a few years ago. There was a real life program which gave police officers a tax break if they were able to find a place to live and choose to live within the city. And we felt like that was a great way to tell a story about police officers not only finding a great real estate deal, but also finding an opportunity to perhaps kind of walk the walk in addition to talking the talk. So if the goal is to increase communication and make that more of a positive experience for the average citizen, then what better way to do that than actually live amongst the people that you work around? So that was a goal, and also to try to get a sense of the city itself, which we consider a character on the show.
Thank you so much. I actually have another question, if I can ask. My question is, do you have access to SWAT training to create that environment for the show?
Absolutely. SWAT is always SWAT, it was just renewed for season 5. I won't be with them for season 5 moving forward, but I know that they're telling great stories, and season 5 is about to be amazing. But we've always had the fortunate resource of having really great professional police officers who were involved as consultants on the series. So the first 4 years we had an LAPD Metro SWAT officer, in addition to a San Diego former SWAT officer. And then even on the side, writers and collaborators often will do their own research. So I know even before I'd written the pilot, I'd done several ride-alongs. I was the first TV writer to ever do a ride-along with Metro SWAT, so I had to get geared up with the bulletproof vest and the helmet, and I wasn't in the line with them, but I'm like far in the back behind everybody as they're going in. But it allowed me to have some insight on, and all of our writers and collaborators, insight on the real lingo, the terminology, and more of a sense, again, on humanizing, the people behind the badge, to greater have an understanding of what the experience is.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really nice meeting you.
You too.
Thank you so much, Lorraine and Aaron. We're going to pass it to Casey, who has another question for you.
Hey, this is kind of a jumping off point off of Lorraine's question, but I think SWAT, especially in the past year, was in such a great place to really tackle these growing conversations we're having about systemic racism in the U.S. and policing. So I guess from your perspective, as SWAT continues and we also have more TV shows and stories that tackle this, what are some stories you want to see continue also tackle the issue, or what are some angles that you want to see, looking at the issue?
Well, that's a great question, Casey. Thank you for that. And what I'll say, and I'll try to keep it brief, is I can answer it probably more for myself than for the show, because with the show moving on to season 5, and I'm no longer with the show, I know that the show will continue to tell the same balanced, topical, challenging stories that it's always told. And I'll be looking at it as a fan, like everybody else now, for the first time, which would be interesting. I have no idea what's about to happen, but I'm excited to see. Certainly my wish for the industry as a whole, because I'm a TV fan, in addition to actually writing material, is to see different storytellers having a chance to give their points of view on different genres, so whether that's a police procedural or medical procedural, or character shows about romantic relationships, or shows about zombies, or shows about superheroes, or shows. I did a show called The Get Down before SWAT that was about the rise of hip hop in New York City, or shows about coming of age or music. My hope is that we'll get to see more and more DNA infused into these shows that come from different points of view. So I don't know what the Persian American view on American policing would be, but I would watch it. I would be curious to know. We're starting to now see a little bit more of an expansion of storytellers and the types of stories that we're able to hear. And I hope that continues. I hope it's not just a seminal moment for 2020 and 2021. I hope that is a permanent fixture. We can continue to build on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Nell, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. I've got a question for Dr. T and Kabelo. I actually have 2 questions. One is that a lot of my friends use the term Black girl magic, and I would love to hear how you define that. But the other one is that it seems to me that there are 2 meanings in the title, that it makes me think of a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, because you're giving a serious message in the midst of a sort of an almost lighthearted tone. So I want to ask you a little bit about mixing the seriousness of the message and how you thought about making it a very accessible message.
You go first.
Sure. Making sure I know which question to answer. Black girl magic. I suppose for us, it would be the fact that we're mom and daughter, and then we're in animation and in business together, which is wild. And we happen to be Black. So that's for us, our magic, I guess. But in terms of the lightheartedness and the seriousness of medical animation, I think is because inside the studio, there's the serious side and then there's the lighthearted side. And so naturally, when we come up with the story, there's that balance already embedded. So when Dr. T brings this heavy terminology or these really difficult concepts, I'm able to ask super simple questions so that I can try and create the visuals with the team to describe whatever medical issue we were talking about. Specifically in 3 teaspoons, it was diabetes. And that's where we are able to balance and still have the story give you the information that you need to know about the illness, but also make you laugh or make you cry as you watch the animation.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that, in that she came up with the name 3 teaspoons of sugar, and I thought it was clever because not only is it depicting 3 people that have to deal with a disease that is related to sugar, I thought it was just an interesting way of depicting diabetes. Everybody thinks it's about saying 3 teaspoons of sugar is okay to eat during the day. No, it's about the three characters that we've just given them the 3 teaspoons of sugar. Medicine can be quite heavy. As a clinician talking to people, we always talk about people's heads, and doctors usually don't have time to talk to patients. So and having seen it for 26 years, I decided that she would probably bring in the lighter version of it into what I wanted to portray in the message of diabetes. So I'm just glad that we were able to portray a heavy message, but in a light manner, in a manner that it could relate to people, and the message can be interpreted and understood so that behavior can be changed. Because for me, I wanted to see this film changing people's behavior without it being too heavy and too boring, you know. So that's the answer to the second question. But in terms of Black Girl Magic, I think for me, Black Girl Magic means you can be Black, but you can do it excellently. You can be Black, you do it eloquently. You can be Black and do it and refine it and do it and take it to where people didn't expect it to go. You can be Black and do things that wow people, because you know, my colleagues will ask me, "You're a doctor and you're in animation," and I said, "Yes." You know, so Black Magic is pushing the boundaries and just coming up with exciting concepts.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then I'm moving on to Lindsay, who has a technical difficulty, so I can go ahead and ask the question. This next one is for Jennifer, and she was wondering what it was like coming up with a sound or soundtrack for Why Women Kill.
Oh, that's a good one. Thanks for asking, Lindsay. So whenever I read a script, it's very important to me to get down to the characters, the environment, and also it's such a collaborative process. And working with someone like Mark Cherry was just amazing because he was very clear on his vision. And if I looked at his past branding from Desperate Housewives to the first season, he's very strategic about his music. He is a huge music lover like myself. That's probably why we clicked. And everything happens for a reason. Every music cue, everything is very strategic and important. So to come up with the soundtrack and to really work with someone as a big visionary as he is, we had to be really strategic. There's one of my favorite placements I did was Dance of the Nights by the Romeo and Juliet Ballet. And it was really fun to be able to incorporate classical music or music that everyone knows in a different kind of way. And also, the show is a comedy. Yes, it has dark moments, but just like life is funny. It's not dark all the time. So I really love being able to play with music in that same way. For example, Dance of the Nights from the ballet, we have this really funny scene where one of the characters is trying to pretend to be the woman that was murdered, that's buried in her garden. And just the whole comedy behind trying to convince the neighborhood that's actually her leaving. So we have this really funny scene that's also a little bit dark, if you think about it, considering what just happened or what they were talking about, and just the juxtaposition between life. We have things that go on in our life, and just having the comedy that kind of goes with it in that environment, in that neighborhood, really bringing in the neighbors and the feel. So coming up with the sound was really important, but we had to look at it not just from a music level, but also as a character building world level. And to me, that is a lot more fun than just saying this is a great track or this is period music. Like everything has an intention, a sound, a note, a character, an environment. So it was a very collaborative and also a hard work process. And I think we did a really great job, and fans seem to really be gravitating and loving just this new season of Why Women Kill. And I really appreciate people that always like call out those, fun little music notes. And we have a lot of little underlaying of music as well. And working with the composer as well, sometimes composers, we can create a mood from a composed piece versus a pre-existing piece as well. Nice to meet you, Lindsay. I'm sorry you're having technical difficulties.
Great answer. Thank you. And then moving on to Lorraine, who has a question for Macy.
Hey, Macy, how are you? Nice to meet you.
You too.
I have two questions, actually. What aspects made the Ratatouille movie so interesting to you to work with? And what moments stood out the most for you and why?
Sure. Sorry, could you repeat the first question?
What aspects from the Ratatouille movie was so interesting to you to work with?
What aspects from the movie were most interesting to work with?
Yeah. Because
So
you created a musical, right? So what aspects made you create that musical for you?
Totally. So something interesting about the process of putting together the musical is that there were all of these different TikToks that existed that were like songs that were beats or moments in the movie. And because when everyone was creating these pieces, no one necessarily expected that it would turn into a musical that got professionally produced, it's not, you know, I think there was some understanding of like which beat would cover which plot point in the movie, but like when we got to putting together the musical, the Ratatouille team in particular, our two book writers and Dan Mertzleft, our music supervisor, had to kind of work to figure out like, are all of the beats in the movie covered? Are all of like the plot points they're covered in? Do we have an existing piece of TikTok material to cover all of those things? And you know, there were a couple little holes where like new songs were written just for the musical, like the big I Want song that Remy sings when he gets to Paris. We were like, okay, there's nothing covering that. So like Dan and his lyricist collaborator, Kate Leonard, wrote a new song for that. So I think that like, it was fun to like, you know, be able to match up those things, but also to be like, where can we expand upon the movie in a way that is specific to the language of making musical theater, right? Like the I Want song, even in a, you know, film context, is such like a theatrical, dramatic gesture. So that was particularly fun. And I'm so sorry, could you repeat the second question? I have a very short memory. Could you repeat the second question?
It's okay. What moment stood out for you the most?
What moment stood out for me the most? Honestly, that particular song that was written for the musical version after kind of the TikTok creators Remember My Name was absolutely my favorite moment in the show, because, you know, like if you watch the kind of classic Disney movie princess thing, right? Like all the princesses have that one song. It's like the best known song, that's their I Want song that everyone latches onto. And I just love that Remy got to have a song like that. Like I love that Remy the rat gets to have his like Princess I Want song. And I don't know that people were necessarily expecting that, but that absolutely was the moment that in the show that stands out to me the most.
It was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you. Passing it on to Casey.
Hey, this is a question about, you know, I love how Cabblow studios tackle diabetes and also COVID through animation, especially during a time when it's great for more people to learn about that. What do you think, or what kinds of responses have you been getting from people in healthcare, you know, who are maybe seeing your work and hoping that it helps audiences?
Look, I was just trying to get into the animation industry first, right? Because I come from a completely different industry. And when I got in and the pharmaceutical companies were first to pick it up, a multinational was the first to pick up 3 teaspoons of sugar, I was like, oh, it looks like we are on the right track, because what we were told as new entrants into the market was that what is, you know, people were asking, what is medical animation? 1 and 2, short films don't do well in the market. So we came in and we knew that there was, you know, just so many challenges. But once the pharmaceutical company picked up, then I knew that we were on the right track. And then my university where I went, which is a vets medical school, when they were interested in that, I thought, if the academics have an interest in our short film, then it means we are tackling and doing things right. For me, the cherry on top was one of the European universities, I think it was Queen Margaret in Scotland, when they then approached us and said, we like what you're doing, and you know, let's talk. I then knew that, you know, I'm on the right track, and that I had found something which is an animation that can tackle complex medical topics such as diabetes. And then, of course, we were also picked up by the one festival in China for scientific producers. So the medical fraternity is slowly opening up to using animation as a tool to educate, even though they were the late, you know, late as in inverted commas, entrance to using animation for edutainment. But I think it has been well received. And the diabetic patients themselves love the content, you know, because it speaks to them in a method that is not intimidating
or condescending,
and in a simplified way, and in a way that they can always refer to when they need to. So for me, it was a win-win.
Honestly, for me, it just says make some more, make some more shorts, make some more series, because it looks like we found a really clever niche. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And then next, Nell has a question for Macy.
Hi, Macy. I absolutely adored Ratatouille the musical. I watched it 3 times. You had, of course, a lot of hurdles from working through the shutdown, but you also had a lot of opportunity to work with some of the biggest stars on Broadway, as well as some very gifted amateurs. So tell me a little bit about what the professionals brought to this show and what surprised you about working with the amateurs.
Sure. Well, I mean, of course, like the right off the bat challenge was that no one could get in a room together and rehearse, right? So everybody had kind of a varying degree of comfort level with the technology and filming themselves and doing all of that. I personally wasn't very much heavy on the vocal side of things. I was mostly working with the orchestra. I had a co-music director, Emily Marshall, who worked with Dan to like rehearse all of the vocalists over Zoom. And from what I hear from them, there was a very wide spectrum of how people felt with the recording yourself even after however long in the pandemic. But I would say not being able to get into a room and just do it all together the way that we normally would in theater was certainly the biggest challenge. And for the orchestra in particular, like we couldn't just put an orchestra in a room to record the score. So we had one day in the studio and we had to break everybody into sections and record the score 4 times over every time a new section came in order to like be safe and be tested and whatnot. So I would say, the people who, the actor stars who were working on the production were total pros. Everybody, regardless of like wherever they were on the spectrum of like technology comfort, like everybody knew what worked best for them and knew how to get the job done. And we were really lucky to just have a phenomenal cast. And also there was just like kind of an excitement around the show, especially like I remember like right when it was announced and like I can't even remember how many tickets they sold in that moment, but like everyone was really excited to be a part of it. And I think that added to like a really collaborative energy across the board.
Great, thank you so much. Moving on to Lorraine.
Hi, I have another question for Aaron. We know that S.W.A.T mixes real life issues like Chris's bisexuality and Hondo's feelings about his sick father, and like the audience can actually relate to the TV show. So can you tell us about the process of creating such emotional episodes, please?
Yes, thank you for that, Lorraine. I think the goal of any storyteller, and by the way, I feel as though every human being is a storyteller in some way, whether you're telling your loved one about your day or trying to tell a joke or trying to give directions to the market, you're telling a story. With that in mind, when we bring storytellers together, certainly our writers and writers room, the best stories often come from personal experience. So the storylines that certainly were exhibited and have been exhibited in S.W.A.T always end up starting from a place of real life experience. So even in the case of Chris's character, played by actress Lena Esco, and it's funny, we covered a wide range of what I would say controversial topics. We covered immigration, Black Lives Matter. We covered, politics within Los Angeles. But the one topic that gained by far the most polarizing response was Chris's bisexuality. There's something about sexuality and sexual identification that seems to become a real red button topic. But bottom line is that we'd had a few people who had experience in coming out as bisexual and had unique relationships. And we had never seen, as far as we know, as far as I know, that storyline portrayed in what you would assume to be a cop show. But we had an opportunity to go into the personal aspect of what is it to be a person, in her case, who had a throuple, basically a relationship with a couple. That was not a threesome, as I always end up correcting my family members. Not a threesome. It was actually a relationship with 3 people. What does that look like? What are the emotions of that? We were always looking for opportunities to tell stories that we hadn't seen before, especially in a world that you wouldn't expect to see it in. So that was certainly the case there. And then with any other storylines, Hondo and his father, I always felt that was a powerful opportunity to show an African-American man and the nature of his relationship with his father, which I don't see too often on TV. And I've been watching TV my entire life. Just the ins and outs, the complexities, the disagreements they have, how they work through them. The fact that the core idea of the show is that it's supposed to be a cop who saves the world, but not everyone feels the same way about cops. And what happens when those closest to you, including your father, may have a very different opinion of police officers, even though he's the person you probably respect and love the most. It allowed us to have opportunities to kind of have debates, to not just assume that this is good versus evil. It's more gray. What are the opinions that we can provide for the audience and allow the audience to have discussions for themselves, whether it's on parent-child relationships, or whether it's on throuple relationships, or whether it's on other topics. It would always start from conversations we had in the room about our own lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then Nell had one more question for you, Erin.
Yes, thank you very much, Erin. Keeping in mind the caution we had about NDAs and all of that going into this, I was wondering if you could tell us something about what you're doing next, or if not, just tell me what kinds of priorities you have. What are your favorite kinds of things to work on?
Thank you, Nell. I'm inspired by everything that I hear that's going on around me. I mean, with Dr. T and Kabelo, when you're talking about trying to improve the world, get good information out for audiences, with a lot of the way Jennifer uses music and the way Macy's been able to do that. I'm inspired by all of that, and I feel like the possibilities are endless as far as where we can take storytelling. My hope, and even though I can't comment on specific projects that I'll be working on, is to continue to try to add to the worldwide conversations in a positive way. And so in the genres that I look to work in, and I love working not only with police procedurals, but also coming of age stories and family dramas. And, in addition to trying to entertain and trying to make the audience laugh and cry, hopefully within, the same hour, I also hope to add some nutritional value, so that audience are able to take away something from each project that I do that allows you to engage with those around you, with the positive conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And then Lindsay had one more question for Jennifer, which I can read for her. Do you have a favorite memory of working on Why Women Kill?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So as Macy was saying earlier, working during the pandemic, especially with music, and you can't be together to record, is very, very difficult. And figuring out how to do on cameras where we have, these women singing around a piano and someone singing on stage was very difficult to have to figure out how to do this during a pandemic, because when we shot Why Women Kill, the COVID protocols are different than they were now, where before they were very strict. I mean, we have a 40s show and we have no wind instruments, no trumpets, nothing, because we weren't allowed to even have them on set. So that kind of makes you think, and we had to be really kind of creative and strategic about how to still give you those music elements without putting people in danger, abiding by the rules, making sure everyone was okay. And looking back now during the pandemic, I was probably tearing my hair out and having crying, just like everyone else. But looking back on the work that we did together to creatively think about this and really give justice to these characters in the story, I think is a really proud moment and should not be taken lightly when you're watching TV, because it is a lot of extra work. It's a lot of different ways you have to do things. And that's kind of a very positive memory for me now, looking back from when we, shot this last year during the height of the pandemic. Also, for me, another fun kind of favorite memory was working with someone remotely. I've never, I worked with my entire team remotely. We've never met in person. We've had relationships only over Zoom, and it's a different type of experience that you have. But it was really fun creatively, and also to talk about characters more And I feel like people's guard was down a little bit more about these different things. I mean, for this season, for Why Women Kill, we do talk about, from a female perspective, as women, we look at someone and say, oh, she's beautiful, everyone's perfect, versus the woman who might be bigger that we say is, oh, she's bigger, she's not worth anything. We do talk about those social issues that have to do with image and our view of self-worth, about, oh, she's beautiful, she's perfect. And then someone else says, wow, look at her life, how amazing it is. And you don't see it at yourself. So working from Zoom, we kind of had those deeper conversations that maybe we wouldn't have in person because we were always on the go, which you still are on the go during COVID, but it's just a different form of storytelling and filmmaking that you kind of have to pivot. So both of those are really strong memories for me that I think will always be in my heart. And as we continue with our storytelling, I think we've learned a lot from those different aspects to make us stronger storytellers.
Amazing, thank you. And then moving on to Casey next.
Okay, this question is for Basie. One of the things I'm most excited for as the year progresses is going back to see live theater again. So I guess from your perspective, what is the vibe right now? How are people feeling? And also, do you think we'll ever see like a live production of Ratatouille, the musical?
Oh, those are great questions. I mean, the vibe right now, it's funny, I actually just came from a rehearsal studio in Midtown where like, I was rehearsing for a show and like they have like the little call board of who's booked in the studio and like all the Broadway shows are back in rehearsal, which is very, very exciting. I think there's like a buzz of anticipation and excitement and like also for me at least kind of like nervousness that things keep going in the direction that they're going. So I think, I couldn't agree more. Everyone is yearning for live theater and live performance. And I know that it's kind of started to trickle back in the past few weeks, but at least for Broadway, I know September is going to really be a really big month for that. As far as a live production of Ratatouille, I would love to see it. I know the people would love to see it. I think that might be a question for Disney and not for me, but who knows? We keep saying that if Ratatouille gets to have a long life where it gets to have many iterations, that will be a blast and so joyful. And if it's just this magical thing that happened during the pandemic that we'll always remember in 2020, then that is just as joyful.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then I believe that is all the questions we have for now. Does anyone have any last minute questions?